Today, we're going to be speaking with Bonnie Stith, and we're going to be having a conversation about her yeah buts. So, Bonnie, I got a question just to kick us off
Mm.
because I know people don't know you, but what's one thing that you wish they knew about you sooner?
That my last name is Stith.
And I still, even after I said I was going to go,
You can go typically, I would just say, most people say Smith, and then they can't find me, or Stith. As I've said to my kids, just get used to, like, telling people how to spell your name and pronounce it, okay? Because that will be your life. So, no worries, Mark.
thank you.
And the kicker is we rehearsed it beforehand, and you still did it. So, okay. So now that I've got you a little off balance, I think maybe that's the thing that I wish I wish people knew about me is that I've got a pretty good sense of humor.
Mm.
And I can laugh at myself very, very more than I can laugh at others, probably.
So
So
that's pretty disarming to be able to know that you're going to be able to laugh at yourself and laugh through things.
if you can't, then it's going to be just a bleak world. It really is. Because there is a lot of funniness going on out here.
But there definitely is. It doesn't matter what side of the world you're on, right? We all have different things that we're addressing. I can read your bio and I will go
Mm.
over it, but are we really our bios? Is that exactly who we are, or is that what we've done?
Your bio is a list of accomplishments. I always think of it as if you think of, in the days when everybody take their flat self on trips with them, right? Your bio is kind of your flat self. It shows what you did, but who are you? And I'm so much more intrigued by who people are than what they've done. I think what they've done is magnificent. I mean, it can show you that they've got grit. It can show you that they stick through it, that they take risks or they don't take risks, or they make money or they don't make money. It can show you a lot of things like that. But when it comes down to it, is like, who are you and how did you do all that?
As you think about that, right? And you think about why people, especially on podcasts, they lead with, a list of what they've done. And that's the first thing that
Mm.
people get to find out about them is
Yeah.
here's this list. And then what you just said, right? It's more important to know that you're funny. It's more important to know that you really actually care a lot about your family. In the short time I've known you, you mention your family almost every conversation of multiple times,
Yeah.
right? But if I listed what you did working for the CIA, is that normally a place that people love their family and talk about them and lead with them and lead about humor?
Well, I think when you look at a bio, if you look at typically most people's bios at the very end, it says, is married and has kids.
Mhm.
Right? As if that's somehow the footnote to their life as opposed to their life. I can remember as a young person, when I first joined the agency, I worked for, at the time, it was You Married the Agency. For women. And I was very acutely aware, even in those days, that institutions don't return or reward affection. And so I was watching women who were ready to retire going home to dogs and cats or elderly parents. And they were the cool aunt or the weird aunt, whichever you liked, that would brought home masks from, Africa or things from Latin America or Southeast Asia in those days. So there was a lot of that coolness piece. But, I was always struck with the idea of, like, is that who and how I want to be when it's all over and done with? And it wasn't that I was racing around looking for a husband to marry, because that was not on my radar in the day. But I knew that there was more to life than an institution.
Well, it's great you realize that early because I think a lot of people in previous generations did exactly what you tried to avoid, right? It
Well,
was
there were societal limitations. Daycare wasn't a thing. So if you had kids, you stopped working.
Mm.
In the career that I was in, you moved around a lot. And so most husbands don't follow wives. It's so much more common now. And I know women who are my age whose husbands have chosen to be the primary caregivers at a time when it was traditionally not the thing to do. And their wives are incredibly successful, and their children have got great foundation. Everybody's doing well. But that wasn't the role model that I had in front of me growing up. And it wasn't the modeling that I saw at the agency in the day. It was women followed men, which meant that I had friends who had followed their husbands, sometimes came back at a lower grade than they left. And so they were constantly repeating over and over again.
thanks for sharing that. So let's kind of frame out your bio a little now that we know that it's not. I think it's a lot easier to read it.
My career started when I applied to an ad in the school newspaper at 22 years old. And I joined the agency a month shy of my 23rd birthday. I can remember having a conversation with my husband about what am I going to do in Valdosta, Georgia, when he called to say, hey, I got assigned it. We were living in San Antonio.
Hmm.
And I had managed to arrange a detail assignment out to the military for 3 years. So I was still an agency employee and working with the military. First of all, I didn't even know what that was. But the other part of it was there was a Starbucks there. That was the big deal. What am I going to do when we get there? Because there won't be a job for me. And we had a conversation that was really short-lived about, should I go back to Washington, take the kids, and him go do this command assignment, or should we figure something else out? And so in that case, when the what about me came up, it was, you've talked about doing a master's degree. What do you think about doing that this time? And so I said, you know what? You're right. So let me go look at what I need to do for a master's degree. That was the response to that. Versus separating our family for jobs. It was like, you know what? I could go increase my education.
And you were at the agency for
34 years. So, you know, when you look at the yeah, but piece of it, we were talking about kind of the, am I too old or am I too young piece. When I joined the agency at 22, I knew that at 50, it was retirement age. Well, listen, at 22, I wasn't thinking about 50 ever. I was thinking about going overseas, doing something cool, and then going back to California. And so, but I was really young, and I was at the very young end of the people coming in. And I would hear that, yeah, but you're too young. Or once you're older, you'll understand this. And so constantly being judged about my age certainly created a certain dynamic where I felt like I had to be tougher. And then you get in the mindset of once you pass that magical date where like, I'm in this for life, you know, or 50, whichever comes first. And I had 2 jobs that I was looking at the agency, 2 opportunities. And somebody asked me, what's the reason you can't do both of them? And it came up, I'll be too old.
So you started with, I'm too young because I don't get respect because I'm so young. And by the time you achieve something, then you're too old and you got to go, or we're done with you, or.
So is it mindset or is it reality? In the career service I was in, and certainly in the retirement system, there was a maximum you could be age-wise, unless you made a certain grade. And so I did make that grade that I could stay forever, and yet still chose to not be there. Because you know what? It was time to go do something else. And back to that, yeah, but I could stay here and keep doing that. But what else is out there?
So what helped you get unstuck from what people were trying to put on you with that, yeah, but?
You know, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with a couple of women here a while back. And I think foundationally, I had a father who told me I could do anything I wanted to do. And I believed him. And because my earliest orientation was somebody telling me I could do anything I wanted to do, I didn't believe what other people told me. I was talking to a leader in industry here not too long ago, and he's in a second marriage and they've just had a daughter. And he's got older sons. And he said, you know, but with this one, I really feel this great need to protect her. And my conversation with him was really about, don't protect her. Tell her she can do everything. Let her try. Let her do it. Because the world is going to let her know what she can't do.
What's something you think people misunderstand about you?
I do think that people might think I'm more confident than I am.
And I know it sounds weird to say, but what do you sometimes you misunderstand about yourself? Because it leads up to your yeah, but I'm not sure I can do it.
So I want to reframe that, yeah, but I'm not sure I can do it, to, yeah, but what if I don't do it? I mean, maybe it's FOMO, maybe it's fear of missing out. I don't know. But I know it's really scary, and I accept that it's going to be scary. And I know that it's risky, and I accept that it's going to be risky. But what if I don't?
Tell me more about what that looks like, the missing out, the not doing it, the.
Well, I mean, I can tell you. So I applied for this admin school newspaper, right?
Mhm.
Like if you like cruising, you know, in foreign affairs and foreign languages and traveling abroad, you should apply for a job at the CIA. And I thought, well, I like traveling abroad. I mean, I majored in foreign languages in college. I'd traveled overseas a couple of times. I'd done a year abroad in college. I thought, sounds like a place for me. Well, I get the call saying, and I was working at the time, I graduated, I was working in the software industry out in California. And so Silicon Valley was really starting to take off. The guy that I was working for he was the president of the company, was going to move to another company, and said, I want to take you with me as my executive officer. So obviously there was already a path going. And yet I get this call from the agency saying, hey, we want to hire you, and you need to report to Washington, D.C. on this date. So one of them was a path that was going to be interesting, and it was going to take me further in an area that I was already doing. But I knew that working with him, I was going to continue to go up. The other was, is it a good thing I'm getting hired here? And, you know, it looked like a great salary, but when you get to Washington, D.C., you realize there is no great salary, because it is very, very expensive to live there, even in the early 80s. And at the time, I remember thinking, I know kind of what this is going to be, but what if I don't do this?
It was worth the risk.
Yes, it was worth the risk because my whole life is, going forward is based on that decision of stay or go.
But you don't have regrets. It doesn't sound like you have regrets picking the choice you made.
I think the things that I regret are missed time with family. I chose a career that took me away from my family. But when you talk about in the space of doing things that I wanted to be doing, basically getting opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten in any other career, living overseas, which was always my goal, and being part of, of history in some places.
Tell me more. Tell me more about some of the things that you did that were, because we only talked about the CIA a little. We didn't really even talk about your position at the CIA yet. So people are like, okay, she worked for the CIA. Most people don't know what they do, and they don't even know, like, so let us in.
Yeah. My job when I went into the CIA is I joined the clandestine service. And so at that point, I was being trained to go overseas and collect intelligence. And in the day, it was a human to human thing. I met you had access, and I worked with you to get the things that the government needed to inform them on whatever. And so that's what I was, a human intelligence collector.
And when you say you don't mean me, you mean some other person, just so for clarification.
Marc, if you had secrets, I'd be all over it. No, yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's the thing. It was a human to human thing.
Right.
Because what I realized, in order to get information, you have to talk to people. As I moved through my career, I moved into other areas because, the beauty of the agency is you don't have to be one thing the whole time. You could be other things. So I got involved in resource management. Obviously, I got detailed out to the Air Force and worked with the military to build war exercises. And then in my final job, I was running a cyber intelligence organization.
So as we talk about buts, the reason I mentioned why I picked that specifically for the title of my book, but cut through the noise to live, learn, and lead better. It's mostly our internal dialogue saying we can't, because we already know people tell us like we can't do lots of things. We listen to that, we crawl up in a hole and do nothing because we're like, everybody says I can't do this. There's a chapter in the book called but not where I'm from, right? Because you don't see people around that are successful. So what do you do to minimize the impact of the excuses? How do you keep that going as you age and other excuses come up and other things?
For me, it's I mean, and I speak from a place of privilege. I get that. It could always be worse. But I'm kind of what you call the eternal optimist. And I think I deliberately set out to create the circumstances for it to be better. Mm-hmm. So I marry this Air Force guy, and we start trying to figure out how to juggle careers. We start talking about whether we want to retire in San Antonio because that's where we are. And we're looking at it. And then all of a sudden I get this phone call from this person at work at headquarters that I don't know. And I'm thinking, well, I guess I'm going to get fired. And he says, you've been promoted. In the meantime, Bob has gotten this assignment to Valdosta, Georgia. So the whole idea of staying in San Antonio is out the window because it's a command assignment, and squadron command is a dream of every Air Force officer I know. And so why shouldn't he get to live that dream that he's got? And that's when it came to the, but what about me? Well, you've talked about going back and getting a master's degree, but even getting there was a but about me getting to San Antonio because they just come up with this cool new system in the intelligence community about what they called community assignments. And when Bob got assigned to San Antonio, a person I knew at the agency who was a Navy officer that was detailed said, hey, there's this guy coming in from this place in San Antonio, and there is a community assignment position there. And so you can sit in that, but what about me, and not do anything. Or you can say, but what about me, and make it happen.
But so you took a but what about me? And people can sit in that and go, I feel like I'm losing my identity. I feel like I'm living for someone else. And again, it might not be a spouse. It might be parents' expectations. It might be society's expectations. Yeah. And you follow this path. But what I heard you do and what we talk about in the book is, but so what? Now what? Right? Like, so now if this is the truth, and we know this in coaching, right? So you're like, okay, well, if you're telling me this is a stated fact, what are you going to do now that you know that? Right? And it sounds like you took and said, okay, well, what are the other options? What could be possible? What can we do differently? How can we play this? But it sounds like you had support, Bonnie. Like, it sounds like you and Bob, even again, I don't know him, but I'm thinking you had a discussion and did this. What happens when there's resistance and you have to work through your but in a way where you're not getting that let's do this together kind of thing?
And that's a really good question. And so I will tell you that some of the most powerful coaching I ever got was in coach training from a young lady who was 21 years old. And so there I was, old enough to be her mother at least. We were having this conversation. He was ready to retire. I wasn't ready to retire. So I get this coaching, and it really came down to the topic was, I just feel really mad a lot. And I'm not sure why I'm mad. And what came out was, I was mad because we were constantly having this push-pull and the belief that somehow or other I was going to have to be unhappy for him to be happy. So the assignment was, essentially my homework assignment was go home and have a conversation about what the possibilities could be. So I said to him that I got home, I said, we need to have a conversation. And of course, his first thought was like, are we getting divorced? And I said, I hope not. That's not my plan. But I said, we just need to have some sort of an understanding about what this could look like. What could we do differently? What could we accept? What could we allow? And in that conversation, we agreed that we didn't have to be on the same timeline. And so there was an opportunity for him to take an early retirement and move to Kentucky and go into business with his brother. And it became a logistics question. But what about me piece had already been taken off the table. And I think that was a pivotal moment for both of us because it allowed me to stay and do what I wanted to do and ultimately get to be in my dream job for a year. He was doing what he wanted to do, which ultimately has resulted in both of us being in the same place again, happy.
Thanks for sharing that story. I think people have a really difficult time navigating relationships and work, and you have life and work as a part of it, right? We've made so many myths about things. I was like, you have a life, you have 1,440 minutes a day. What you do with it is how you fill that life with things. And you mentioned about coach training and coaching. So that's not a CIA related thing. You did this on your own, even though I know you help people, coach people, help
Actually,
leaders.
I did not. The
Okay.
CIA never made to be trained as a coach. It started in the 90s. They brought coaching into the agency and it has grown from there. I mean, there is a belief, I believe, that first of all, coaching can help you decide whether you want to be a leader or not, because there are people that really don't want to be, but because of circumstances and promotions, all of a sudden you find yourself in a leadership position. And not only are you a poor leader, but you're probably a poor manager too. So the decision piece, like, do I want to be or don't I want to be? And then if I'm going to be, what are the things that I need to be working on? So, absolutely. Agency is a big believer in coaching.
Let's take a quick pause to talk about something that could make a real difference in your organization. If you're looking to develop strong, effective leaders or need help facilitating a critical meeting or event, I've got some solutions for you. With my leadership workshops, your team will learn how to cut through the excuses, communicate better, and lead with confidence. Whether it's a small group or an entire company, these workshops are designed to create lasting impact. And if you've got an important meeting, event, or project that needs facilitation, I'm here to make sure it runs smoothly and that every voice is heard. I bring a structured yet flexible approach that helps teams get unstuck and move forward. So whether you need a leadership boost or help facilitating an event, I'm ready to partner with you. Let's talk about how we can make it happen for you. Head to www.marcawolfe.com or reach out to me directly to get started. Now back to the show.
I think I spent a lot of time talking to people about, I had a belief that, that one of the responsibilities I had as a senior female was to reach out to other females and move them up. I believe strongly in a diverse workforce. And so I wanted people around the table that didn't look like me. And I wanted people that had different experiences, because I think when we brought it together, we could create an organization that was incredibly powerful in its capability to do things. So I was working on that from a very early stage in the leadership piece. Is like, how do we get more people in different roles? So at the time that I got promoted to senior executive, my belief was it was time to be pulling people up, pulling other women up. There's a great book out by Eliza Mundy called The Sisterhood that really speaks a lot about, some of the foundational days of women in the agency, many of whom I've known. I just believed it was it was kind of my responsibility, my way out the door, to be pulling some up and having conversations about, look, I'm on my way out, but how about stepping up here? Because
it's like succession plan. You leave me a legacy of other people to be able to do. And I mean, isn't that the goal, is to be noticed without having to keep asking for it, but be noticed for your accomplishments?
I mean, it might be an idealized view, but the reality of it is, Mark, is, women wait to be asked to go on dates. They wait to be asked to dance. They wait to be asked to be married. And so you either raise your hand and you're identified as that pushy broad, or as many of us were told in school. And I would guarantee you, if you asked a woman who's at all assertive, she had a teacher that told her at one point, you're too bossy, you talk too much, and the boys don't like it when you tell them what to do. Because you get that kind of programming, you wait to be asked. But who actually gets those opportunities, Mark? People waiting to be asked. It's
Right.
people who are asking for them. And I think the piece that I really looked for was I would have meetings with women who were at that point where, I was asking, are you ready to step in and step up? Because I know you've been waiting to be asked, and now I'm asking you.
Are you seeing a change, Bonnie, that people you're coaching are having conversations where at least they're leaning into it more and are less afraid?
I think, some of it's situational, some of it, I still hear the, yeah, but I'm a girl. I mean, I believe that. If you see it, you can be it. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about a health issue. And she said, well, this is what they told me. And I said, well, you got the girl diagnosis. And she persisted. And there is a real issue there. And then my next question to her was, well, what are you thinking about as far as addressing that? She goes, because it can be addressed, but it's scary. And I said, I'd like to offer you a gift to think about. And she said, what's that? I said, I would like you to think about what decisions you're making based on your fear of going forward with any kind of treatment on this that are limiting your life. And so they're thinking about a cruise, but now she's worried, well, what if I go on this cruise and I have one of these episodes? So maybe we shouldn't go on that cruise. And I said, I'm offering you a gift. I'd like you to think about how your quality of life is going to be impacted by not making a decision to go forward with treatment. I tell you what to do because it's your life.
I love how you put that, a gift to think about.
Yeah. Well, I think the reality of it is nobody wants, I told somebody the other day, if you really want to get my teeth to grind, start your sentence with, here's what you ought to do. Okay. And I know you do. Okay. So, when somebody starts a sentence with, well, here's what you ought to do, I could feel my bones clenching. Right. So I could have easily said to this person, well, what you ought to do is go get this done. Right.
Right.
As opposed to, here's a gift to think about. Because it's not my decision to make for you. And that person, I'm looking over his shoulder, but can but it all they want to. But it's not, but what if I do? It's really going to be but what if I don't?
And then I can't until I ever overcome this. But if I don't take any steps, I may never. So my life becomes the worst of what it could be because I'm afraid of doing anything because I have this thing I won't take care of. Again, we're not condemning this person, right? I don't even know. But what I'm saying is that overlay this over anyone's but. It's here's the way I'm going to limit my life. And then I have this self-deprecating world where everything's horrible. One of your other buts that you mentioned, Bonnie, was, but I'm not ready. So tell me about that. Because it sounds like you're almost always ready, Bonnie.
Well, I still have that internal conversation, but I'm not ready to retire. But I'm not ready to do that. But I'm not ready to be that. I think we can have that internal conversation all the time. My question to myself is, if you're not ready now, when will you be ready? If not now, when? I think the biggest piece of it is all growth requires risk. And I think if you can accept that all growth requires risk and that risk is hard, because even with somebody that's got a very low score around prudence or a low value around prudence, there's still a risk. And it's not that I'm willing to take any risk, because people that know me will tell you, I don't risk money. There's certain, I don't risk my family. There's certain things I don't risk. I do have a high skill around mischievousness, which is another issue. But the reality of it is I accept that if I'm going to grow, it's going to be hard. But the opposite of growth is wither. And I'm not ready to wither.
We're going to wrap it up there. I think that's what people need to hear, right? Is that in a world where you're either growing or dying, right? Every day we're actually, it sounds morbid, right? But every day it's one step closer to a date we don't know.
I know how the book ends. I'm going to be honest with you. I've seen this book. I've seen the movie. I know how it's going to end. That doesn't mean that I have to live like it's the end.
Right.
You can still it's the beginning. And I think that's back to where I say I've got a kind of a Pollyanna view on life.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather be like my grandfather at 94, shoveling chips in my front yard in a bucket and with my driver's license in my pocket and have that heart attack than be sitting in my chair waiting for the heart attack. I think that's the but is I could not live. I think I'm going to go with but I could live. The reality of it is I think that there are good people that do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And I think those are the people you find. And those are the people that I look for. And I'm going to tell you, if I'm finding them, there's more of them than you think there are. And so that's, that's what I would say. Find those people.
Bonnie, I'm glad I chose you. Your stories were inspiring. They're truth. You show that you can have still a balance of being with a partner, having a family, having a career, and actually retiring where someone doesn't have to lose for it to be. If you could lean in and let people have access to you for one thing that you love to do and you can help them with, tell us a little bit more about what that is and how they can reach out so you can be in sync with them.
I have a website, stithcoachingandconsulting.com. I am on LinkedIn. If you reach out to, it's Bonnie Stith, so you can contact me through LinkedIn. I would say that I'm what you call a get it done kind of coach.
Bonnie Stith, you are a rock star. I'm so glad I've worked with you and met you. And this is not going to be our last conversation because
By far.
you and I can talk a lot about it. Thank you for becoming part of the Yeah But podcast, and your stories may wind up in a lot of other places just because I know they're inspiring to other people who can see beyond. I didn't work at that same place, but that is my story. I can't believe you can share that in such an easy way. So thank you so much for that.
Mark, I appreciate the time with you, and I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, listen, I got stories for everything. So I appreciate the opportunity to really maybe present a different view of how you can approach things.
Bonnie, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for listening to the Yeah But podcast. If today's episode provided valuable perspective on how to overcome the excuses that can hold you back, let us know in the comments. Remember, it's not about the yeah buts. It's about finding ways to live, learn, and lead better every day. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little kick to get past their own yeah buts. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And for even more tips, connect with me at marcawolfe.com/podcast. Until next time, keep challenging those excuses and keep moving forward.